Problem 5. Mr. Gibson bought pencils for the majority of his 35 students. He bought the same number of pencils for each student, and that number was greater than 1. The cost of a pencil in cents was greater than the number of pencils he bought for each student, and the total cost of all the pencils came to $23.87 before tax. What was the price of one pencil in cents? Alrighty, well, we know that if we knew the number of pencils, right, the number of pencils, and we were to take that times the number of pencils per student, okay, and then if we took that times the number of students, okay, we don't know the number of students because it says that he only bought pencils for the majority of the 35 students, not all of them. So, so we don't know how many students he bought for, but it's got to be greater than half of 35. Okay. So, so if we knew all those quantities, we could multiply them together, and we would get the total cost, which we actually do know. We know that he spent $23.87. Okay. But we don't know any of these quantities. We have some clues. We know that the number of students has to be a majority of 35, and we know that the cost of the pencils was greater than the number of pencils they bought for each student. But, you know, it's kind of like, well, okay, how does that help us? Well, the key to this problem is to recognize that, first of all, $23.87 is just 2,387 cents, right? We could write it that way because it's a nice whole number instead of this decimal here. So, and we also know that the number of pencils he bought is a whole number, right? Because he's not going to buy, nobody's going to sell him half a pencil. So that has to be a whole number. And the number of pencils per student has to be a whole number because he's not going to give a student a half a pencil or a quarter of a pencil. And also the number of students has to be a whole number because you know, he's not going to buy for half a student or a third of a student. Okay, so we know that whatever you know, whatever these numbers are, they have to be whole numbers. Okay, so that's the key, because if we factor this 2,387, we might get lucky. But that's the key, is then to factor this and see what the possible factors are of 2387, and then, you know, knowing that the pencils cost a whole number of cents, right? Because they're not going to charge 23 3/4 of a cent for a pencil. It's just going to be a whole number of cents, and then pencils per student is going to be a whole number, and the number of students is going to be a whole number. Then let's see where that takes us. Okay. All right, 2387. Now that's not a easy one to factor off the top of my head, but I'm going to look at the prime numbers. All right. Okay, I know it's not divisible by 2 because this is not an even number. It's not divisible by 3 because, let's see, 15 plus 6, that's, wait a minute. Let's see, 15 plus, not 6, plus 5, sorry, that is 20, and that's not divisible by 3. Okay, so we know it's not divisible by 3. And it's not divisible by 5 because it doesn't end in a 5 or a 0. So next prime number is 7. Now 7, I don't have a nice easy trick for that, so I'm just going to divide it by 7. So let's see what we get. Let's try dividing by 7. So 2387, 321, 2, 28, that's 4, 28, up to 7, so we get 341. Okay, so we know that 2387 is 7 times 341. Okay, well, let's see, and we know 7 is a prime number, so let's see about 341. Can we factor that? Well, we already know that it's not divisible by 2, 3, and 5, because otherwise we, you know, the original number 2387 would have been divisible by 2, 3, or 5. So we can skip ahead to 7, I guess. We can try dividing it by 7. So 341. So what do we get? 4, 28, that's 61, and you can't divide that evenly, right? Because 9 would be 63, 8 would be 56, so that's not going to work. So it's not divisible by 7. So the next prime number is going to be 11. So let's try dividing by 11. So 341 divided by 11, let's see, 333, 1, 1. Hey, look at that. Alright, so 31 is a factor, and 7 is a factor, and 11 is a factor, right? Alright, so 2387 is equal to 7 times 11 times 31, and 31 is prime, I know that. Okay, so hey, look at that. We have a number that's the product of 3 prime factors, and we're looking for 3 numbers. That's a good deal. So let's reason out which number is what. You know, what's the number of students, what's the number of pencils, and so on. Now we know he's buying for the majority of 35 students. All right, so it has to be greater than 17, 18. So this has to be the number of students that he's buying for. Students. Okay. We also know that the cost of a pencil in cents is greater than the number of pencils. Okay. So the cost is greater, so this has to be the cost of a pencil, and this has to be the number of pencils per student. Okay. Alright, so what did we ask for? We're asked for the price of a pencil in cents, and so that has to be 11 cents is the cost of one pencil. Alright, so there's your answer.